In interviews, I am often, oh, yes, I am still much sought after for interviews. The press wishes to keep my husband alive through my memories. I am often asked for a chronological recitation. I find this impossible. My mind simply will not embrace chronology. It's as though Mr. Brady's magical flash powder explodes at intervals, sharp, focused, but illogical in reference to time. At this moment in time, I am preparing for exile. And it seems that at this moment in time, I must try to put into order that which can never be ordered. One embarks upon a journey with feelings mixed, anticipation, and a certain anxiety bordering on fear are the usual emotions. In the spring of 1837, at the age of 18, I left my home in Lexington, Kentucky, to visit my sister and her husband in Springfield, Illinois. The home of my father and my stepmother had never been large enough to accommodate a first wife's children. I could not know the scope and the extent that journey would encompass. I do know that also in Springfield, my cousin, John Todd Stuart, had recently acquired a new law partner, a man with the unlikely name of Abraham Lincoln. Spring water. One of the more delightful aspects of Springfield, and ever so much more healthy than drinking the Potomac. I will be leaving here soon, and these things, they will accompany me. They shall never be of use to me again as they were originally intended. But I must have them. They are my life. If not used, they will be held and touched. They remind me that I have been places and that I was once a force. Now I'm waiting. I'm standing in a line. Soon I will be at the head of the line. And that gentle difference between this life and what follows will will dissolve. And once again, I will be accepted. It has been a long time since I have felt any sense of belonging. I was the fourth of 6 children born to Eliza and Robert Todd. Women of that time were either pregnant or nursing, and when they had worn themselves out doing both of those, they died, leaving a husband to start a second family with a second wife. If this assessment seems cold, it's because it is cold. The truth often is. The realm of education at that time was a province inhabited exclusively by men. The female was afforded about 4 years of a formal education, consisting mostly of those things that would make her a more useful part of the family unit. By that, I mean her mind was seldom challenged. Social manners and graces headed the curriculum, with an emphasis, though never spoken aloud, on flirtation. To call this boring would be to underestimate the situation considerably. My father's only slightly advanced opinion, coupled with my stepmother's failure to warm, afforded me 9 years of formal education. 9 years! Well, after they had run out of social graces to pound in my head, I was free to pursue subjects usually not the prerogative of my sex. My 2 favorites, history and politics, which are one and the same. History, oh, what a continuing adventure. And politics, a gambler's paradise. Just think of it. To be able to mold and manipulate the minds and the destinies of others. Oh, I was so anxious to leave Lexington. History will have a very difficult time defining the state of Kentucky. How does one define an abolitionist slave-holding state? In Springfield, I longed to go. I had so tired of the social scene. There were plenty of eligible young men in Lexington, but none whose mental capacities could keep pace with my own. And the girls in my social circle, they seemed only interested in being decorative confection for the purpose of snaring the proper flies. Oh, in Springfield, I longed to find a setting where I could be appreciated. I will never forget the first moment I saw him. The legs, too long and spindly to hold up the bulk of what was above. The hips were narrow, the waist was narrow, the bulk was at the top of the tree, and the head huge. His voice thin, reedy, not at all what one would expect. Abraham Lincoln, he said, his voice cracked 3 times. I'm Mary Todd, I said, and I was entranced. Sometimes our heroes are freaks. Abraham was a freak of sight and of sound, but he was a genius of mind. Here was someone not of the common mold. Here was someone capable of astounding, mostly himself. It's a difficult thing to define a potential for greatness, but it was there, and I felt it surely. Why, Mr. Lincoln, you flatter me. It isn't often a gentleman will forego a dance for the sole purpose of conversation. Do let's sit down. Oh, you're going to give me a neck ache looking at you way up there, and I'm way down here. I'm down here far enough that I can make a small observation. Are you aware, sir, that you are wearing one black sock and one blue one? I do believe you could use some looking after. Well, our courtship had its ups and downs, and at one point it ended altogether. But when it resumed, it was as though the interruption had never happened. And so, after I got used to some of his idiosyncrasies, I would never get used to them all. And after he had accepted my temperaments, he would never accept them all. In November 1842, I put on my sister's white silk, and I married the man while the wedding cakes were still warm from the oven. I looked up into his face. He looked down into mine, and our eyes said things. Let future lovers know we loved. Historical people, when written about, are rarely looked at in terms of passion. Make no mistake. Passion was felt. I enjoyed being Mary from Springfield instead of Mary from Lexington. The quiet times were ours, but they wouldn't stay quiet. Politics would not let them stay quiet. My husband's ambition would not let them stay quiet. And soon I would fan the embers. Now, there's a rumor that I forced him into politics. I did not. I helped him focus on what was already there. Politics is the science of manipulation. And 22 years we lived in Springfield. 22 years. The first year after we were married, my son, Robert, was born in a boarding house. And then we bought our house on 8th Street. And we stayed there until our fortunes took us to the capital. 3 years after Robert, my delicate little Edward was born. In 1850, Willie entered our lives. And in 53, Thomas, Tad. The most chilling event during those Springfield years started with a slight cough and a fever. My little Edward had never been a healthy baby. His illness progressed, not rapidly, but at an almost imperceptible pace. Slow, protracted draining of life. 52 days and 52 nights of unendurable suffering. A slow death to witness is a horror beyond all imagining. And then that helpless vigil. I was much alone after Edward. My husband's business, first of law and then of politics, kept him often gone. I resolved to be part of this new bent. If Abraham were the subject, then I would be the adjective. I would modify and add color to his action. A political woman among sippers of tea and connoisseurs of gossip. I mentioned that politics was a science. It is a science of manipulation. It is the art of making the unwanted seem desirable. War. Certain constitutional amendments. All done with a subtle sleight of hand as to make the lowliest believe they have a voice which is heard and heeded. Now, a woman is not supposed to figure any of this out. She is to press her nose up against the window pane of all such knowledge. And either her father or her husband or her son will take care of all such matters. Hogwash. I learned early to nod my head yes when my mind was screaming no. And better still, how to do something about it. Now, if you stop to think about it, there is a modicum of humor in the melding of a very tall man and a somewhat short woman. Come minor elections, I made sure they remembered the very tall man and the short woman, because politics on ballot day is as much about voting for frivolity as it is about boring subjects being debated boringly. And then, all of a sudden, in a small election in the state of Illinois, in a minor confusion over political parties being unable to hone in on a candidate, all of a sudden, Abraham was the candidate, and he was unopposed. It was as though it should be. But could it be? President and Mrs. Lincoln. And then the culmination. November 6th, 1860. 3 months after the convention in Chicago, which resembled a cutthroat game of chess between ambitious men. Abraham marched in through the door, our house on 8th Street, and he announced, "Mary, we are elected." Oh, my first glimpse of the executive residence appalled me, and we went directly to the Willard Hotel. The so-called White House was anything but, and looked to me like some rural country estate that had seen better days. I dubbed it the executive pig pen, and I resolved immediately to do something about it. Queen Victoria of England and Eugene of France did not live in squalor. President and Mrs. Lincoln had no intention of doing so either. The war was accelerating. Indeed, troops from the Southern conspiracy were on our very doorstep. I wanted the war over and the much more interesting political machine to resume its normal course. I was already painted as a Southern sympathizer because of my background and my father's support of Mr. Davis. My main focus was to support the great cause, but to bring the White House and the presidency up to a national standard. My redecorating and my frequent visits to the Washington hospitals to comfort the wounded became my sole two occupations. If the press damned the first, well, they supported the second with a modicum of praise. In October 1861, the White House was refitted to a proper standard. If this made me enemies along the way, so be it. Show me one person of influence who has never made an enemy, and I will show you a fool operating under grand illusion. I have been called mean-minded. I have been called petty. I have been called selfish. And in one particularly abrasive newspaper cartoon, they put my head on the body of a rodent, a shrew. Well, all of these adjectives are correct. You choose not to listen if you think I'm going to make excuses or apologize. I am mean-minded in that I will not tolerate abuse of me, my family, or my husband. Selfish? More than you could possibly imagine. My face on the body of a shrew. I take offense at that. I would much rather my face be on the body of a chameleon. That is much more to my taste and much more me. How often can a statement be made and then taken and twisted by the minds of others into a hurting, killing thing. I wish my son could die, I said, and I did say it. It was after one horrible night of sweat, screaming, ramblings, and uncontrollable movement of bowels. I looked into Willie's. That sweet face. White. No color. And I thought, how many more nights like this? I got up to bathe, change. And as I left the room, I whispered, I wish my son could die. Those words went down the hall, out the door, and into the world for all to hear. Mrs. Lincoln wishes her son would die. She wishes to be unencumbered. That's what reached the public ear. I did not care. I bathed and I changed and I went back to Willie's room. He was quiet. Still. And I knew before I even touched his hand that it was over. Nurse came in. Mr. Lincoln wishes to know the condition of his son. Tell Mr. Lincoln the condition of his son is as well as can be expected. And she left. And I was alone with her. I took a damp towel and I placed it over his face. Mrs. Lincoln got her wish. She was unencumbered. And the unencumbered Mrs. Lincoln held the hand of her dead son the entire night, unwilling to tell the world his little life was over. The public, when you are a public figure, the public demands that you share your feelings, no matter how deep, with all of them who are so eager to feed on. I will not share my feelings for the sole purpose of public consumption. Abraham could pretend with great credibility. In public, he would pretend that the death of Willie came almost as a gift, a cessation of his son's suffering. But in private, in Willie's room, oh, how he wept. Abraham will tell you that more will be written about the Civil War than any other event in American history. I will not dwell on it. I will leave that for the historians to make of it what they will. The lives lost, the destruction, the waste. I will only say that it ended. The war was over. And I was first lady of a country deeply divided by hate and ambition, but singular. I had never been an onlooker, a watcher of events. I had breeding, I had vision, and I had money at my command. Use it, I thought, and I did. I spent money. In the end, I spent less than Abraham. He spent himself. In April 1865, Abraham had a dream. Unseasonably warm spring. I lay there in the bed, listening to my husband's breathing. Something wasn't right. And then he sat bolt upright to the foot of the bed, his head in his hands. I lit the lamp. I put my hand on his shoulder and he grabbed my hand and he said, "I've seen it. I felt it. I've seen it. I felt it." And then he said, "Oh God, these words. Mary," he said, "oh my Mary, I want to finish, but I will not carry my task to completion. For I have seen the bursting open of my head, the end of my brain. And when it really happens, Mary, it won't hurt like it does now. What will hurt is that I did not finish." I could cope no longer. I got up. I went into Willie's room. I curled up on his big empty bed. I left my husband alone with his premonition. It was as though I wanted to hold the specter of our dead son like a shield against destiny. Until that tall man entered my life, I was just a girl. He brought me a world of ideas and beliefs that I could help him attain. He brought me sons, and their lives brought me to my knees. Belittled by history I will be, but that does not make me less than I am. I tried so hard. You know, history does not record try, only failure. I don't think Abraham was ever young. I think he was born old, carried a burden. I try to think of him as a child, a boy. I can't. Something about him denied youth. Oh, the legends are already starting. The rail splitter, the boy of action. I just can't see it. Maybe we make our heroes too big. I went with him to the theater. I was bored with the idea of seeing a play that held no interest for me. Our American Cousin. Well, my boredom would vanish, never to return. I would be propelled into a time from which return was impossible. So the play began. And it was, as I had suspected, a boy. There's sound, slight rustling sound in the curtains behind our box. Hand thrust forward with a gun, an instrument of instant destruction. And then that other sound. Oh, that sound. Never forget that sound. Laughter from the audience covering the inadequacies of a second-rate play. My husband's on the floor. Abraham is on the floor of a first-rate theater box. A single event in history. Does history ever see the blood on its hands? I'm not talking about the blood in books. I'm talking about blood that is dark, sticky, congeals quickly, forms a scab, and then when that's wiped, again becomes moist. Oh, the lies of history. Dried blood on its pages. This is my Abraham. And a man leaps over, out of the box onto the stage. There's blood on the floor, my shoes, my dress, all over me. It's the blood of my husband. Booth, they say, was the name of the man who leaped out of the box to the stage. They say he landed badly. something snapped, a bone, I don't care. They say they hunted him down. I do not care. They say he was shot. I do not care. Finally, the play was stopped. Someone noticed. A president was dying. Someone finally noticed. Shall we move him? Yes, take him across the street. And they did. They took him across the street. They laid him on a bed too small for his frame. And there he died. I'm left on that dark, bloody floor. I was left to follow. I found myself. I got up, I went to the corridor, I descended the stairs, I crossed the street, and I went into the room where my husband lay dying. Some 9 hours later, it was over. Does a nation know that the sorrow of a nation can be held in one heart? A nation seems not to want to share sorrow. Farewell, nation, I will not share either. I will take this as I have taken Willie Edward to my private place. But let me speak to you, nation, of anger. Are you angry that you have lost your leader, your helmsman? Are you? No. You are bewildered, and you are waiting to be led, and you will be by another. You will be taken into new times by new leaders. I will stay here. So leave your sorrow. I will pick it up. For I am in a time that I cannot leave. My hate for this country and my love for this country are one and the same. You move on. I hate it. I cannot. And I hate that. But once we were joined by a single thread of humanity. One person. Oh, I love that. Move on. My Thomas, my Tad, he died of pleurisy at the age of 18. I will not iterate my grief, except to say that it was as though I was playing a well-rehearsed role. For this is a part I had played many, many times before. Edward, really my Abraham. Ted. Yes, I became preoccupied with spiritualists, seances, and the spirit world. I had more people in it than I did in this one. I looked upon you and touched you once. I will again. Stay close. Stay close. When I was young, full of grace, I did not need a hiding place. And then they took you. They took you all away. Now I will hide. And here I will stay. Then there came a time when I had to look at a word from a new perspective. It was a word that up until that time I had only ever heard used humorously, mockingly. What an insane hat Mrs. Stanton wore today. The Dentons are all insane about that new play at Ford's. They say Mrs. Keene is a comedian of insane proportions. Insane. I had to look at that from a new perspective because now I, Mary Lincoln, was the subject of that adjective placed there by my own son. I think people are viewed as insane that have words or actions that differ from other people's particular point of view. Well, in that context, I am insane. My son would have me incarcerated. He would not have to deal with me then. But a small warning from small Mary. I will not stay there. I will find my way as I always have, and I will slither out from under that onus and be heard again. But it does hurt to have a genetically connected person do such a thing. One May morning, I was expecting a delivery, and in walked three gentlemen. One I recognized, a Mr. Leonard Sweat. He had nominated Abraham at the convention of 1860. The other two were unfamiliar to me. He was there, he said, to accompany me to the courthouse where a jury was waiting to judge my sanity. Now, when one hears those words, one has to be very careful how to react and respond so as not to give that defense. If I would come quietly, he said, he would accompany me in his own carriage. If not, then I would be escorted. Accompany him? I would not. Precede him? I did. And I was out the door into his carriage and seated well ahead of that fool. In the courtroom, there was a parade of accusations. I was being judged because I argued with clerks. I was being judged because I spent. I was being judged because I saved. I was being judged because I insisted on a fair exchange of work and effort for my dollar. In short, I was judged because I was not a man. In a matter of minutes, a jury of 10, all men, reached the verdict of insanity and recommended immediate incarceration. I was permitted no defense. So, off to the institution, where I was under the ministrations of a Dr. Know-It-All Patterson. My first meeting with that doctor, I was polite to the point of syrup. Every subsequent meeting, I was calm and collected, and I acquiesced, and I cooperated, and I was out of that hole in 3 months and 3 weeks. And 36 years after I first set sight in Springfield, I was again at the home of my sister. I was returned my right of judgment. I was returned my financial responsibility. I had lost forever my one remaining son. I do not care to be in his presence ever. I shall end my life childless. And so I shall take these things, these boxes, these trunks, and I shall exile myself into anonymity. I shall move a shadow in black from place to place, and I shall ask nothing of any man. In the wake of my mourning garments, I will leave behind only what unkind history will say. I can only say to you that I loved my husband as best I could, and that even now, with history being reassessed, I love him still. What does greatness smell like? What is the feel and the touch of history when it has yet to become history? What is the meaning of a life when in the living of that life, moments will be lived again and again and again in the minds of those who analyze, dissect, and ultimately rearrange history. I was born Mary Todd in 1818. In the spring of 1837, I journeyed to Springfield, where my cousin John Todd Stuart had recently acquired a law partner. a man with the unlikely name of Abraham Lincoln. A lady, you know, always exits a door quietly.
To stay and answer any questions that you have, either about her and her preparation for this play, or about Mary Todd Lincoln herself.
Yes.
What fascinated you about this character? What prompted this?
I love history. And I was very intrigued because all I had ever heard was she was crazy, she was volatile, and somebody said to me, and I kept reading things about her, and someone said to me, "Do you think she was bipolar?" and I've actually also heard that said about Abraham Lincoln, that he had melancholy, bouts of melancholy, and that he was quite possibly bipolar also. And I got to thinking about that, and I didn't answer. And I said, you know, I'm hesitant to diagnose these people because have you gone through what they went through? As far as Mr. Lincoln, you're trying to hold a country together, didn't work, and then the only way you see that you can possibly reunite the country is by killing. I mean, we were killing our own people. That's institutional insanity when you stop to really think about it. And how he had to agonize over that. I mean, there are wartime presidents, of course, and of course, when they know that Americans are going into battle, but this was telling Americans to kill other I mean, that's, think about how you feel. And I mean, Mary's family were Southerners. So it had to be interesting conversations. And then I think about, they lost their child, they lost Willie. He was 10 during the war, at the height of the war. And they believe now what happened to Willie was they pumped the Potomac right into the White House. No filter. And they think Willie actually got typhoid and bilious fever. He was literally poisoned by the water and died a horrible death. And to go through that while the war is going on. She lost her baby, her little Edward. That was not that uncommon then, but when you start to couple it with, okay, I've gone through this, now I'm going to lose my other son in the middle of a war. I'm vilified in the press because I'm spending money on redoing the White House. How fitting is that? And then it's also then she loses Abraham violently. And then it's not over. She loses her darling Tad at 18, and then her only remaining son has her committed. I mean, I might be bipolar. I might take a little offense at that. Yeah, I mean, I can't diagnose them. And I became fascinated because what I started seeing about her was she wasn't like previous first ladies. She was an outspoken woman. She was an incredibly well-educated, given the time in which she lived, very well-educated woman. She understood politics more so than women, any woman. She could sit down and talk politics with men, probably because she had to. We just can't talk with women. So I do think that she was ahead of her time. And a lot of people, when they're ahead of their time in which they live, they are regarded as odd. You know, they don't fit. So I'm kind of like, that's what I fell in love. This play was commissioned by the University of Illinois. They commissioned the playwright to write this. And so he started researching her and he said, I want to look at her with fresh eyes. I want to look at her as maybe more like from a 21st century. So without trying to really alter her historical events. But she traveled abroad mostly after she got out of the institution. She just traveled, spent a lot of time in Europe. But when her health started to fail, she did come back. And I believe she died at her sister's house. A bit reclusive at that point. Wasn't very old. She was about 58. But you know, I mean, when you look at pictures of that last picture Matthew Brady took of Abraham Lincoln, you're like, well, you know, guy looks pretty good for 75? He was 56 when he was killed. I mean, he looks ancient. And I mean, evidently that's what that did to him. So, and I mean, it was a catastrophic thing to go through. And the fact that he didn't finish. And I think we're still feeling the ripple effect of that. But I love history and of course I love theater and I'm like, ooh, win-win. Get to do this. I will tell you, this is a truncated version you're hearing. The actual play is 2.5 hours long.
Wow.
And I had to ask the publisher, can I make cuts, because that really tests my memory and probably your rear ends. So and they said yes, here's but I had to clear it. Can I cut? Yeah.
Was that premonition real? Did he really have
Yes, he and Mary were both big believers in dreams. And what did they mean? I mean, we're talking 100 years before Freud. And they were really big into that. And that's the other thing too that intrigues me was Abraham was as superstitious and believed in all this stuff like Mary, but he's nobody picks on him about it. It's like, oh, well, it's Abraham, and partly I think he's a sacred cow. And he's kind of this marble man. He's so legendary that nobody wants to say anything negative about him. I understand there's a show on Broadway called Oh, Mary. And it's like a comedy about, I don't know a lot about it. I would probably love to go see it. But she's really a fascinating character as first ladies go.
Why did her son, what prompted him to?
She and Robert, as near as I can tell, they never got along. He resented. She went to Abraham and begged him. Robert wanted to serve. He was embarrassed. He was embarrassed that he's the son of the President of the United States and he's not serving. That was because of Mary. She made Abraham promise, I don't want him. He would be in so much danger because my family are, they're Southern sympathizers. Her family was. She said, I think he did get some kind of a office job but he always resented that she would not allow him to serve. So I just don't think they ever clicked. You know, I know that Willie and Tad, she adored them. But she and Robert didn't get along. So, yeah.
I was hoping that you could run us by the editing process.
Oh, how I edit? I would go through it. And I would say, okay, she said this and emphasized it once, and it's a little redundant. I don't see the need to emphasize. I mean, let's get to the meat of what is going on here, because he does in the full length version. She goes, as you can see, I had to emotionally go, shing, 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 like this. He's even got her even more. And I was like, okay, there's only so much I think the audience can come along with me. And so it was a painstaking process. It took me like about 3 months to just pick at it and say, no, I'm not going to say that, I already said that. I don't see a need to reemphasize it. And I will tell you, there are things that she says that I bristle. The hardest thing for me to say convincingly, because it's just so harsh, is when she said her view of politics is very jaded, even for a woman of that time. When she says to make even the lowliest believe, I'm like, so you don't believe that it was hard to say that. It was like, God, that's harsh, because I'm maybe it's Pollyanna, but I do believe. And of course I have the benefit of, reading about her. She didn't go on. She didn't see what happened with politics and everything and the strides that were made, so I think she completely got out of it. And I do know that the Lincoln line died with Robert. He never had children. Now the Hanks, Abraham's mother, Nancy Hanks, the actor Tom Hanks, direct line. Nancy Hanks, the Hanks line goes on, but the Lincoln line died out. It died with Robert. Yes.
Have you had any correspondence of any kind or with Tom Hanks?
No. Oh no. 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 Gosh.
Wondering about the playwright, and did you?
I watched an interview with Vaughn McBride shortly after this play was presented, and the first time it was presented, and he was interviewed, and they asked him, in his opinion, of all of the portrayals of Mary Todd on stage, in film, according to his research, who did he think nailed her, like really got her? And he said Sally Field in Lincoln. He said close, and he said, and I have to say Daniel Day-Lewis came the closest. He said talked exactly the way all of the people, Lincoln's contemporaries, said his voice didn't fit him. It was thin and reedy. Everybody wanted him to sound like, Henry Fonda or Gregory Peck or, but he didn't. They said he had this weird, high, reedy voice. So you wonder how effective were his speeches. And maybe that's why we look at the Gettysburg Address, my God, it's like poetry. It's so beautiful. But I wonder is because he didn't talk long. And maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Because he's like, well, I don't really have a very good voice. So he was like, let me get to it. And I think in the end that made his speeches amazing. Because he didn't. My understanding is there was another speaker at Gettysburg who spoke for 2 hours. And that's why that famous picture of Lincoln, there's one picture of Lincoln at Gettysburg, and he's actually, you know how long it took the photographers to set up? And by the time the photographer had it ready, he was sitting down. So it's this grainy thing where he's doing this. He was done. I think the Gettysburg Address is literally 2.5 minutes long. Incredible speech. And the other guy, we don't know what he said. It was over 2 hours. And Lincoln viewed the Gettysburg Address as, he thought it was one of the worst speeches he ever did. He just thought he was so inadequate. And I just wonder, what would he think? Because it's the most quoted presidential speech of all time.
Probably because it's the shortest.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah, but it's gorgeous. I mean, it's almost flawlessly written. And the fact that he wrote it on like the back of an envelope, you know, like an afterthought. Yes.
How do you go about either memorizing or preparing yourself to speak for an hour? Do you ad lib it?
No. There are parts where I went, oh crap, I forgot that part. Well, I'll stick it here. There was a couple of moments there, and I did that last night. There were they heard some of the things I said in a different spot. But one of the things that I've always said was there is absolutely no substitute in theater in memorization for repetition. There's no fairy dust. There's no magic. It's do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. I was a theater teacher, and I used to say to my drama students, I used to say, you know, I could put you in an induced coma for 5 years, wake you up, and ask you to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and you would do it flawlessly. And you know why? You said it every day of your life. That's why. And I said, there's no difference. You just have to do it over and over. Now, there are different tools I use. Like, obviously, there's the visual. Look at it, put it down, say it. Then, believe it or not, I write the entire thing out by hand. And for me, there's a direct line from here to my brain. For me, that works. It's not pleasant. Don't like doing it. My husband look at me and go, isn't it right there on the pit? And I go, that's not why I'm doing it. It's because that goes from there, up my arm, into my head. And then there's audio where I'll record myself and I listen. So it's like audio, visual, physical. It's like I have whatever tools you can use. And like I said, about 3 months, just all the time. You can ask my husband, wandering around the pool, just mumbling to myself, you know, doing the dishes. I'm babbling, you know, and of course, you know, we've been married for 35 years, so he's like, what? I'm like, I'm not talking to you. And he's so patient with it. Like, I would be drilling, and he would come out and ask me something. I go, and he would say, I interrupted you. And I went, yes. Now I have to start all over. So, yeah, but I had to get it well enough that when I would get nervous, I could say, forgot that. Okay, I'll stick that here. So you heard the whole thing. You may not have heard it how it was actually written. But I had that in my favor, you know, and that's what I would tell myself when the nerves would start to really get me. I'm like, well, they don't have the script. So they have no idea when I'm doing. And there was, at first I thought, ooh, this is theatrically a great advantage because when you're on stage with other people, you're relying on them that they did their bit.
Right.
Some of them do, some of them don't. And when they go up, when they forget, you're kind of like, because I can't talk until you say that, you know. And so I thought, oh, what a relief not to depend on someone else, but then it was like, this was so challenging. And it was a bucket list thing. I'd never done this because it's like, it's just me. It's just me. So I've got to move over here when I say this, or I'm not going to remember. I've got to pick that up when I say, I'm not going to remember. So
Make your own cues.
yeah, I had to come up with my own. Yes.
Would you tell us about your outfit?
Oh.
Put that together, or is it?
No, it's pieced.
Okay.
I found the believe it or not, I found the dress. The dress was on. This is actually the bustle is separate. And this the hoop is my daughter's wedding dress. Hoop. And then I didn't want to wear the the boots, you know, because it's too hot. So I just wore my husband's socks and my dance shoes. Because I was like, they're not going to see much, just black, you know. And then, yeah, but it's just kind of pieced together. The dress, believe it or not, Amazon. It's Amazon.
And
You got to
the
time it right. You got to find like Halloween. You know, I was like, oh, look at that black dress. There was a beautiful one that was, I mean, the whole business, the whole 1876 bustle, and, you know, a little too expensive. So I went, well, this works, you know, and then I found the veil. And,
wonderful.
yeah. So,
It's not an antique then.
huh?
And
It's
the
not an
gloves.
antique.
No. Oh, no. No, it's just a veil. Just searching around. And I mean, being a former drama teacher, you know where to look. You know, you're like, oh, let me look at this company, see if they still got stuff.
Well, you did it.
So,
Yeah,
thank you.
great.
And it's actually quite comfortable. Yeah, that was the other thing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you should know that Crystal sponsored this. She
Yeah, I
paid
did.
the royalties.
Oh.
ATT Studio Theater did not pay anything. This is Crystal's gift.
This is
fundraising
my gift to ACT. And a little gift to myself, you know, because I wanted to do this. Julie Harris did a version of not this play, but she did a version of Mary Todd Lincoln. Julie Harris also did. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the play The Belle of Amherst. It's about Emily Dickinson. And Julie Harris won a Tony for 2.5 hours. Of course, Julie Harris could probably hold your attention for 2.5 hours. But anyway, that I saw a video of her doing that, and I was like, wow, a one woman. I just really want to try that. So so this was kind of a bucket list thing. So,
Nailed it.
thank you. Yes.
I want to say I also found it to be very educational.
Yes.
Well,
There were
thank
so many
you.
things I didn't know.
I had an interesting question last night from a gentleman. Of course, the hardest scene for me is Willie. It's very hard. And he said, how dark a place did you have to go? And I said, you know, that's an actor's secret. They never reveal what am I thinking, you know. And really, I didn't have to go very far because I said I'm a parent.
Yeah.
You know, immediately you're talking about your child. I was there. So, I said I had to go dark, but not as far as you think. So that was, what's hard is to regain control. Because I'm like, okay, I got to move on. I can't let this take over. You know, that's hard. That's hard. Yes.
Did you read any books about her outside the playwright? Get to know her?
Yes.
Would you
Yes.
do you have any recommendations?
Um,
Interesting.
Yes, I read, oh shoot, what was that one called? It was called something, a woman from Lexington or something like that. And then the book Lincoln, I read, and it had a big section on her in there. And then I would just read different articles about her, like from different historical societies and Todd family records. The Todd family still goes on. So I was trying to get. There's a gentleman that does a lot of shows with us. His name's Milo, and he's from Kentucky. And I would call him. I would say, I need you to say this because I need to hear. I need to hear that Kentucky accent. He has a very pronounced Kentucky accent. And I said, I need to hear it. How would you say this? Because I said, I have that, I'm Ohio. I have that boring Midwest, nothing. And I said, but I know that they said that she had a rather pronounced Southern accent. I still think it sounded more like a Georgia lilt. But I would say, Milo, say this for me. So I would know. So I'm like, he said, no, your R's are too hard. And I said, yeah, I got that Midwestern hard R. And he said, no, they say softer R's. So he was a big help, actually. And it's just practice, and hearing myself over and over and over again. But yeah, yes.
Have you ever actually seen the cartoon of Mary Todd Lincoln and the
No. I never thought to even look that up. Yeah, I wonder if there's a record of it.
I think it really does exist, though.
I'm sure it does, or I'm sure he wouldn't have put it in there. But that would be an interesting thing to look up.
I just looked it quickly and I couldn't find it.
Because political cartoons they were rough. They were way harder back then on people than I think they are today. They were mean back then.
Right.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, as you were researching Mary, did you look at different periods of time, and did the coverage or the interpretation of her character change? As you got further away, as our current,
Oh, you mean as she aged,
no,
or
I mean as like the people who wrote about her who were contemporaries versus people looking back at her, because you're kind of looking at history through our own lens.
Yes.
Yeah.
The best thing that I did hear was, and it wasn't so much in reference to Mary, it was just in reference that whenever you read about historical people, they go, you have to remember that you are a product of the time in which you live. You, and a lot of people don't realize how much whatever eras you have lived through have influenced you. And they said, so many times that lens that you have has to be broadened. And with historical people, what did they say? With historical people, that lens, a lot of people resist it being because they're like, no, I see it this way. We were taught this, and I will not, come out. I won't look at that lens any other way because we just don't want to. And so that was one of the things that I kept saying, okay, there's too many people saying she was crazy. She was shrewish. She was volatile. It's too much of that. That right there tells me something else. something else going on. Because that was, most of those comments were written long ago.
Yep.
And it was like, as time has gone on, as women have drastically changed in society, this view, the lens is shifting. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, was she? Well, maybe, but maybe she had a reason. And maybe she did have something to say. One White House historian said it was Mary Todd who brought the White House to the standard that we know it today. It was Mary Todd. And they said, you'll hear stuff like Dolly Madison, and they said, Mary Todd brought the White House. Because you have to understand, when she talks about Queen Victoria, they were friends. She knew Queen Victoria. That's why Mary went around all in black after Lincoln died, because Victoria did after Albert. Victoria set fashion. She was the first to wear white at a wedding. And black from the time Albert died till she died. She wore black. So Mary did, she was a fashion person, very much so. So yes.
Did you identify in your research any letters that she wrote?
She wrote a lot. She was very, very close with her sister Eliza. Very close to her. Now she had, I believe, 2 others. I don't know how well they got along, but she and Eliza wrote back and forth often. And Eliza was very protective of her. Very, very protective of her. And championed her. Because she was her big sister.
And did you say she passed away first? Eliza did?
No, I believe Mary died first. I think. I'm not sure of that, honestly. But I believe, no, she died. I think Mary died first. She had a little, just rougher time. It could be the traveling. I'm not sure. I think she just wore out. So anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.